everybody. This is Abreen Mustafa from NCSC. Welcome to another episode of our podcast series. This episode in particular is very special and different. But before we get into the idea behind today's podcast, I'd like all of you to get to know our guest a little better. Her name is Ms. Shamyle Rizwan Khan, and she has a master's degree in clinical psychology. Hello, Shamyle, how are you? And please tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Hello, Sabrine. Thank you for having me here. I'm absolutely delighted. Yes, I would like to introduce myself. My name's Shamyle. That's how I'm starting to introduce myself now. And I have a master's in psychology from Qaid-e-Azam University. Then I came to NUST for my clinical psych, and I think that really set the trajectory for the rest of my life, I would say, not just my career. After my clinical psych degree, I taught in Pakistan for a year, and then I practiced in Dubai. Then I came to Canada, and now I'm here. I practice online counseling, and among other things, I'm really expanding myself. But I would also say that I totally believe in research. And so I'm a published researcher. I'm also a published poet because I apparently am also given to poetry.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Apart from that, I really value community engagement. Again, because of my research and master's, that was also about community engagement. And I did some work with NCSC actually. So I feel like I'm coming a full circle here. I'm involved in trainings, just community workshops. I also have started to do Instagram live sessions since COVID. And I go by the profile of the PsychPod. You can look up my name if you're ever interested in psychologists talking about psychology. Yeah.
That is amazing. I didn't know you worked with NCSC before. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was wonderful, actually. My entire research was based on service learning and community engagement and how it impacts the people doing it, which is you in this case. So, yeah.
That is amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so everyone knows it's May, right? And May is also the Mental Health Awareness Month. So around the globe, everywhere, aajkal, we do talk about mental health. We're making efforts to talk about it, to generally create awareness around mental health. And the idea behind creating awareness is to generally promote a culture of acceptance and practicing habits that are better for our emotional well-being, right? So the idea behind today's podcast is to promote behaviors that involve seeking help when you need it. So आज हम बात करेंगे about therapy. We'll deconstruct therapy, and we're going to talk about some misconceptions that are associated with therapy in our society. So सबसे पहले Shamyle, I'd like you to deconstruct therapy for us, like the whole experience of therapy, and what it entails. How does it go for someone जिसने कभी therapy नहीं लिया हो, पहली बार therapy के लिए आएगा?
Yeah, okay. So for me, that's an overarching question. So I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
I'll start with the narrative of therapy that is, that's taken by our culture or most cultures. And I would actually place the responsibility on the people who deliver therapy, that is psychologists. So I'm going to take some responsibility of that. I think psychology ki or abnormal psychology ki, and then therapy and interventions, जो बात शुरू हुई थी since like years ago, वो इसी तरह शुरू हुई थी कि there's going to be a problem and then we're going to solve the problem, right? Yeah. And I think there is some delay and lag in updating that narrative Because when we did our research, when we did like clinical practice, and when I say we, I mean psychologists throughout the time, we realized that therapy is actually not just limited to fixing problems. And I'm saying that with air quotes. I'm going to deconstruct that. It's not just about that. It's about understanding your own individual patterns of behavior. Like, why do you like what do they call it, sausage and not hamburger? Like, what's like, why do you prefer that? So I'm sorry for the pause. I was actually just thinking about sausage ko kya kehte hain. But yeah,
That's okay.
So identifying your behavior patterns, identifying your thought patterns, and why you're inclined to like choose certain friends or choose certain partners. What's the common theme here? What's your type, and why is that your type? And is that really your type, or is this something that you're just familiar with? Because oftentimes we find people are not comfortable, or they're not content with their life. Even though there is no apparent problem, they're not out of their minds, so to speak, but still they're not leading a content life. So essentially what therapy gives you, agar koi bhi like, because there are different approaches to therapy, right? Research gives us a lot of avenues to practice, let's say, cognitive behavior therapy or rational emotive therapy or EMDR or psychoanalysis, right? But the basic thing that any approach to therapy and any therapist is gonna focus on giving you is a very focused on you kind of a human relationship. A safe space where you can actually be yourself, and the therapist is going to mirror your process. And when I say mirror your process, let's say, Zabreen, you and I are talking, and I'm the therapist here and you're the client in this hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very curious about you as a person. And when I say curious, I'm not just, there is not a need to know behind it. कि मुझे ज़बरीन को figure out करना है ताकि मैं ज़बरीन को बताऊं कि उसके साथ क्या problems हैं. It's just a very basic human level curiosity about, hey, how do you function? Like, tell me about your day.
Well put, huh?
Yeah, and if you're telling me about your day, like, really, so do you like waking up in the morning, or are you a night person? Really, why are you a night person? Is it because your day is so noisy and so full with, you know, all the scheduled tasks that you prefer staying up on, you know, all night because it's quiet and you can actually hear your thoughts? Or are you actually like a night person? Right? So when you say, so it's very interesting for me that you would say we're trying to deconstruct psychotherapy, because essentially we're deconstructing every person's condition patterns. And when I say condition patterns, I mean जो चीज़ें हमने by the way pick कर ली होती हैं when we're growing up, because we want to survive when we're growing up. So when you're becoming an adult and your brain is mostly developed now, because it develops until like your late 20s and then brain plasticity, we're asking, have you stepped out of survival mode yet? And have you actually become conscious of, are you choosing this now? Or was it given to you at some point when you were like 5 or 15? Are you just carrying something? जो किसी और ने आपको देनी थी? Yeah, did you really build your life consciously? So yeah,
that's very interesting.
Essentially what that is. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And that's not scary at all. That's not at all scary. All right, so अभी जैसे आपने बताया भी है कि it's just a human relation. It's a relationship between a therapist or a professional and a client, a normal person like me or anybody else, right? So normally when people come for therapy, what are their initial reactions or जब वो पहली बार आते हैं तो वो कैसे react करते हैं to everything and all the talking and everything that happens during therapy?
Well, I can tell you, no two people are the exact same. हो नहीं सकता इस तरह, वरना तो my understanding is कि अगर दो लोगों को एक जैसा होना था तो why is the creator wasting oxygen on two people? Like वो एक ही बंदा कर लेता. But anyway, I think I've had different sorts of first timers. Some people are they're coming from a place of good research, like on their own. तो उन्होंने देखा होता है कि psychotherapy क्या होती है, कौन-कौन से approaches होते हैं, what do they want, and what do they want to talk about. But I've also had clients who were really just curious and they were looking for ideas on how to understand themselves because अब चीजें ठीक नहीं जा रही थी. And when I say ठीक नहीं जा रही थी, इससे मतलब है they're just not happy. They don't have fulfilling relationships. They don't know आगे क्या करना है. They can't see like 2 years ahead. So they're living day by day. And that's not it doesn't mean to उनकी reality से disconnect है, but it's just that they're not present. They're not enjoying, you know? So they generally ask about what is psychotherapy, how is it going to help them, what do they have to do, like how much time is it going to take, right? Is it time limited कि मुझे 1 महीने के लिए psychotherapy लेनी पड़ेगी या is it for life? And then, I would say, what's your goal? Like, what do you want to achieve? Because if you want to understand yourself, you're a process. Like, your life is a process. So if the goal is to take out the tools from psychotherapy that you will use to understand yourself, sure, we can do that in, wherever you're at, considering where you're at. We can say, okay, itne weeks, maybe, we'll see. But if the goal is to continually do that with another person, then, I mean, we can pace it around once in 2 weeks, but that can go on for life.
Yeah.
And I want to say something here. I want to say something here. Okay. It's very interesting that we have like हम लोगों ने एक तो curriculum update नहीं किया, right? People don't know how to do their taxes. So similarly, real life or जो education है, institutional life, उसमें gap है. And it's very sad to see that some people fall through the cracks. And it's not on them that they fall through the cracks. उनकी गलती नहीं है. They didn't get the opportunity, and the other people who actually made it to the other side are not doing anything for that gap to be filled. It's a very collective responsibility, and this is why I'm having this conversation, because I completely understand that it is the responsibility of professionals now to contribute to the narrative, So
Yeah, that's very important. Exactly, because as I said earlier, आपने भी कहा कि we are talking about it, but it's just, you're right, not enough people are contributing to talk about the narrative and make it right, so that जिन लोगों को proper opportunity नहीं मिली to understand something, उनको भी पता चल जाए at whatever stage of life they are at right now.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So a question है कि at what point, like in your life, आपको ऐसा लगे कि अब आपको थेरेपी की ज़रूरत है? Like for a normal, ordinary person, what are the red flags or the indications कि अब थेरेपी के लिए जाना चाहिए, या अब it's something जो कि that needs help, or it might be better to talk to a professional about it?
Well, I would again say कि ये कई तरीके हो सकते हैं, कई वजह हो सकती हैं, but if I want to break down into like a dichotomy and branches में ले जाऊँ, so there is a prevention approach and then there is an intervention approach, right? And psychotherapy can address all of those. So prevention में, if you want to ask what's the ideal time that is an average person should go to, or it's recommended that they would approach psychotherapy and understand कि भी एक resource है, I would say teenage. And the reason I say teenage is because वहाँ पे your brain structures are now developing and you're getting access to them when your emotional bandwidth is increasing. So you're experiencing a lot of emotions. But twist वहाँ पे आता है कि आपकी emotional bandwidth तो increase हो रही है, but आपकी जो intellectual और जो psychological comprehension है, the capacity to comprehend a situation and connect के ये इसलिए हुआ था and then I was feeling this, और अब मैं इसके साथ किस तरह cope करूँ, वो connections नहीं form हो रहे. Right? Because we're busy putting down कि नहीं emotions अच्छे नहीं हैं, like इनको side पे करो, because I have to do so much in my teenage, like I have to pass my FSC and I have to get into a university and all of that. So you're putting aside all your emotions, and frankly in a collectivist culture like ours, majority is not going to have a good role model for emotional coping.
That's true.
So all of that is happening. And this puts the teenage years at a risk, and that's like well researched. Peak risk, you're at risk age. So if you're forming your foundations of emotional and psychological coping in these years, I would say go to therapy so that you understand what are the skills that you want to pick up, because that's gonna put you at a path in your adulthood. So जो second बात आती है intervention की, वो adulthood में आती है. So either you do prevention or you do intervention. So जब आप adulthood में आते हैं, then your patterns are formed. Then you have to understand your patterns. And understand why are they here, and do you want them to continue, or do you want to do something different? And that's, I know, I want to make a point here, okay, therapy is an empowering process for the client. So an ethically and technically sound therapist is not going to say, hum ye kar rahe hain, is always going to ask the client instead, okay, hey, these are the options. Where do you want to go? Because this option A is going to lead you to that point, and option B is going to lead you to that point. So, I can give you the bird's eye view, so to speak, because you can't see that right now. But you make the choice because it's your life.
हाँ, ये आपने बड़ी इम्पोर्टेंट बात की है. दो इसमें से मुझे बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट और बहुत अच्छी लगी हैं. पहला तो ये कि you are going to make the choice of your life. So basically, you're provided with the remote control, and like you are going to take your life in your own hands, and you're going to make decisions for yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, if a therapist is not doing that, switch.
हाँ, इसी से ना Shamyle, my next question कि और आपने थोड़ा सा इसको आंसर भी कर दिया है कि how do we know that the therapist we're going to is the right one?
Oh, well, that's a big one, and that's a very real one. And I really want to acknowledge here that, like I said pehle na, कि the basic thing that a therapist and a therapy pura interaction and the process going to give you is a very secure relationship, right? And it's a very unique one, because typically relationships में एक बहुत strong give and take होता है, एक बहुत vested interest होता है in your behaviors. क्योंकि if you don't like going out and I like going out, then I would want to convince you to like going out, right? Because that's my vested interest. But a therapist is not interested in your personal choices. Matlab, they're not gonna face the consequences, so to speak. So then that takes away the vested interest. That gives me as a therapist the objectivity to help you empower yourself. So coming back to your question, okay, how do you know it's the right one? There's a couple of tips I can give. Okay, pehle to understand how, ask the therapist, whoever you're approaching, because clients do that with me as well. And I think they're very much in their right to do that. Okay, they ask me for my qualification, my experience, the type of experience I have, like the type of clients that I work with or concerns that I work with, and what's my approach. And when you have that information, just run a Google search. That's all. Like, run a 10-minute Google search and understand कि कोई भी approach or कोई भी qualification क्या provide करती है therapy में, and do you want that? So that's like before going to therapy. And when you are in session with a, let's say, new therapist, I would say be very candid and very open as much as you can. Don't try to sit on the fence there. Go in because it's a safe relationship. I mean, you are. This is a big one. Yaad aaya. Informed consent. Okay, this is a big one. Every therapist that you're going to, Pakistan mein to ye masla hai na ki we don't have the psychologist ki regulation nahi hai. We're not registered there, right? There's a bill in the National Assembly right now, and we're really trying to get that into, हम लोग को laws नहीं बने हुए उस तरीके से professionals के लिए, so there's no regulation. When we have that, or actually ethically practicing psychologists are not going by law kya kehta hai nahi kehta, they do their ethical practice regardless. So ethically, your information cannot go out from a psychologist. They cannot say your name, even if they're taking supervision. Like, they cannot give identifiers. कि मेरे पास like 15 years of age, Aisha आई थी, and she lives in Rawalpindi, right? And she goes to this school. I can't say that.
Okay.
That's wrong. So if a therapist is making you sign and is signing an informed consent that states कि ये आपके rights हैं और ये process में होगा, go to that one because that's the safest. Yeah, and when you're in therapy, I would say go all in and understand that there are going to be challenges in therapy. Like, as a therapist, I'm not supposed to make it easy breezy for you, because I'm gonna be telling you the truths that nobody else does, because they have to face the consequences कि आपका mood खराब हो जाएगा, right? I'm gonna tell you this is what you're doing, and then आप react करें या ना करें, we'll say this. But understand कि your system, your internal आपका psychological emotional system है ना, वो किसी भी चीज को that is pointing towards change उसको resist करेगा, and that's very natural. Because your brain is not concerned with मुझे अच्छा इंसान बनना है. The brain, the machine, is concerned with keeping you alive. And familiar keeps you alive, and comfortable keeps you alive, right? So yeah. I think I took it to places, this question, because in my mind, बहुत ज़्यादा psychiatry. But do you think that I've answered it?
Yes, you have. This is a very important question because you're right. Pakistan में ethical practices, कौन से लोग genuinely ethically practice कर रहे हैं in every field, खाली इसमें नहीं, हर field में थोड़ा सा मसला है कि we're not sure about that, but you've put that nicely, and I hope everyone who's seeking out for therapy, so they can definitely take help from this. Building on Shamyle, your few lines आपने आखिर में बोली कि go all in and open up when you're in therapy. So oftentimes when people go for therapy, they sometimes ऐसा हो सकता है कि they're betrayed, they're coming from a betrayal, they're betrayed by their trusted ones, and they don't feel like trusting people with their emotions. And when they come into therapy, there's a therapist in front of them, and opening up about stuff that अभी जैसे आपने बोला truth and stuff that's bothering them, thought patterns जो कि bother कर रहे हैं, it might not be the easiest thing, like अगर मैं भी सोचूं to do, even though it's going to be in professional settings and your brain might be telling you कि therapist के साथ you're safe, which you are, but आपकी feelings in some way or another can mislead you when you might want to not be able to open up. So how does therapy help with that, or how does a therapist deal with that?
That's a great question. I think that's a very genuine one. I'd say like two main things here. First is trust is a building process, and anybody who comes to me, like I'm, in a way, there is a power shift because I know psychology and they don't know psychology, right? So they're like, yeah, she's gonna try and get into my mind, and then I have to resist it, and because I will control what information I give, and I understand that process. So I bring the fact that there is lack of trust here, and we will build on that trust. Like we'll work together to build a trusting relationship. I'm very open about that. I say it. So as a therapist, it's my job to see like how many elephants are there in the room, and then I say them because that's what a secure and trusting relationship does. Yeah, I'm going to accept you for whatever, you think you're bringing the dark sides, जो कि आप usually छुपाते हैं लोगों से, and your light sides that you try to promote, in your society. I accept you as a person because I expect you to have both light and dark sides because you are complete. So I say that. I open the conversation in that way. I invite all of your qualities. And then it's, I continue to invite until they come. So I don't expect that first day pe hi itna trust hoga. And agar first day pe hi they're opening up about their entire life, that's also concerning. Because then we're questioning boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But when I say go all in, I'm saying this is your kind of playground. You open yourself up to your own self. Okay, what is there in my mind? Like, क्या मैंने store किया हुआ है अपने subconscious में, और क्यों store किया हुआ है? Do I really want that, or do I want to replace it? Right? And yeah, you build safety. The second thing I would say is कि आपकी जो इस पे बहुत बहस हो सकती है, मगर what I know from like learning about psychology and philosophy and all of that is कि आपकी जो जिंदगी है जो आप outwardly गुजारते हैं, that's a reflection of the life that's going on inside you, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, financially, physically. ये सारे domains जो आपके अंदर होते हैं, उसी का reflection आपकी outward जिंदगी है. So if there's lack of trust in your relationships and you continue to face betrayal, I would say, how honest are you with your own emotions and your needs? How ready to be vulnerable in, emotionally invested relationships are you really? Or do you typically take the savior's role? Okay, I'm going to try and fix everybody's problems so that I become important in their life, so that I'm safe in this relationship.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, so you know, yeah, we try to understand कि आपके अंदर क्या tendency है जिसके अंदर लोग टैप करते हैं, and you find yourself in unhealthy relationships,
Hmm.
right? Or if you, let's say, if you're talking boundaries,
Hmm.
yeah, what, like, so oftentimes usually होता है कि some people can say thank you and instead they compliment you back, right?
Yeah.
Like, so ये एक बहुत typical सी चीज है. दूसरी बहुत typical चीज ये है कि usually people can say no to things if they're good at something, and if people come to them कि यार ये काम कर दो, ये काम कर दो, they hesitate in saying no. Why? Like, why? You know, does it make you feel important? And then you're like, अगर मैं important नहीं रहा तो, and then I'm not talking about superficial stuff because this is ये एक चीज है जिसमें manifest हो रही है ये बात. ये और भी चीजें होंगी because कोई चीज isolation में exist नहीं करती है. There is a context to everything. So yeah, I mean, human बहुत interesting चीज है, I would say. So I mean, you can try to understand yourself your entire life. कोई और आपकी help कर सकता है. You can propel उस trajectory में, but it's a very fascinating process, really.
That's very, very well put, Shamyle, and that actually clears a lot of existing ideas as well.
Really, I'm glad.
It does because basically what you just said is basically what you go through is you learn new ways to cope up with certain situations that are going to come up in your life, and you're going to unlearn a few of them जो आप पहले से करते आ रहे थे, right?
Yes, yeah. Interestingly, I read somewhere, मुझे पता नहीं किसने कहा था, but I remember this quote कि the highest form of learning is unlearning, and I can vouch for that. Absolutely, I can vouch for that.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true.
I want to say something. You said कि different points of life में आपको different coping use करनी होती है, and I want to highlight this. You said something along these lines a bit just now.
Yeah,
I want to highlight this. Yeah, I want to highlight this कि interestingly, इंसान machines, mechanisms, schedules, structures, organizational management, you know, canteen chalane wale uncle, he's going to try and improve his system, right? He's going to try and move up or make it smoother, make it better, make long-term customers, whatever you want to call that, right? So he's going to try and build security, essentially. क्या मैं इसे बेहतर से बेहतर कैसे कर सकते हैं? Now, interestingly, not many people are asking these questions in their personal lives. How can I make myself a safe person? How can I secure myself emotionally? And then I ask myself, you know, you're not supposed to have the same assignment choice in university. So why is life going to give you the same challenge each time?
That's very interesting.
आपको वही assignment दोबारा आपको वही assignment दोबारा करनी पड़ती है जिसमें आप फेल हो जाते हैं, जिसमें आपने वो चीज नहीं सीखी होती जो आपको सीखनी चाहिए, so that you get to assignment 2. So you're not learning here if you're stuck somewhere. There's a lesson that you have to derive so that you move up a level. And that's all there is to these challenges, essentially. Because
that's very interesting.
If somebody's thinking that they're not worthy of achieving something, I want to challenge that, and I want to say, no, it's just that you're not picking up, you know, a tool from this level that you will need in the next level. Because if the entire universe is sustaining you, you know, if there's oxygen for you, if there's nutrients for you, if there's space for you, then you are worthy. There's a purpose for you here. Yeah.
That's very beautifully put, Shamyle.
Thank you. I'm glad it resonated.
Okay. So Shamyle, I'd really like to ask you how hard it is to process everything that you learn about yourself during therapy. I mean, how hard it is, or it can get to you emotionally. Like how can it impact you emotionally, and how much?
Hmm. That's a very valid question when we're talking about therapy, because it is a lot of emotional work, and it can sometimes feel like a burden, because it's pushing boundaries. So of course, it's challenging. It's almost acting as an agent for change,
Hmm.
which becomes it almost faced resistance at times, because our internal system, जो हमारी psyche है, it doesn't really welcome change. तो
Hmm.
चाहे वो internally हो या externally हो रहा हो, थोड़ा सा resistance आता है, but more when it's not familiar to us. So if what is familiar to us कि लोग कुछ कहेंगे और फिर I'll change, that's familiar. But मैं चाहता हूँ change होना, या मैं चाहती हूँ change होना, तो मैं change होंगी, that's difficult because it's unfamiliar. So the emotional work in therapy becomes normalizing change, and normalizing changing for our own self, for the better. So when we talk about the emotional burden and the emotional work in therapy, it's readjusting the focus on ourselves as opposed to it being on other people. So, but I also want to highlight here that therapist के होने का इस पूरे process में मकसद ही यही है that they catalyze positive change, and they help in that. They provide the safety जिसके अंदर ये process हो सके. So it's not going to be like, me as a therapist pushing some buttons that I know the client cannot take right now. So it really has to go at a client's pace कि वो कितना ले सकते हैं that burden. So if I'm to put it in briefly, आपकी जो coping skills है, they have to match the challenge that it's taking up. So simultaneously, therapy helps you build those coping skills so that you can take that burden, and face the traumatic past or whatever concerns that you are carrying that need resolution. So yeah.
All right. Okay. So there is this concept attached to therapy in our society. Okay, if someone's seeking help through therapy, or going to a counselor, a therapist, the people around them usually find that embarrassing, or they themselves find it embarrassing, and they don't want to share it with other people. Okay, वो इस चीज़ के लिए help ले रहे हैं. And that comes under the topic of misconceptions जो कि therapy के around exist करती हैं. So what according to you are some misconceptions जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा exist करती हैं around therapy, and what do you think, like कितना ज़्यादा impact कर सकती हैं ये misconceptions एक बंदे को जो कि help लेना चाह रहा है for whatever problem he or she is facing?
Interestingly, I was having a very similar conversation with a lot of my colleagues, and I think I'm going to borrow from that conversation to, make some points here. I just said कि कोई चीज़ vacuum exist नहीं करती. Everything has a context to it. And that helps us, in our comprehension of ourselves and other people as well. तो वो थोड़ा सा grounding provide करता है. So I want to say here कि if we are talking about a stigma that exists in our society with regards to help seeking, for myself, then it means there is a problem with prioritizing myself. Like my society sees me prioritizing myself as a problem, right? Because everything has to be done together. The family has to stick together. The friends have to do stuff together. And there's nothing wrong with it. The support systems are something that nothing else can replace.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything has its own place. But वहाँ पे self जो है, वो intimidate हो जाती है. It's dominated by other aspects. And when this power dynamic exists, then everybody looks at me prioritizing myself as a concern. Why do you have to do it? Like, kya masla ho gaya hai? Mere paas aao. Like, I'm your friend. You're not talking to me. Like, why are you talking to a therapist? You see? So, I just wanted to point out कि अगर therapy prioritizing self है, and that is taken as, you know, not something acceptable, then maybe other people are not doing it either. So collectively हम अपने आप को prioritize नहीं कर रहे. So just that.
Yeah,
Secondly, I want
true.
to and secondly, I want to say and of course I'm talking about the majority of the context there. There are exceptions, but I'm talking about the major chunk. Secondly, I want to say when we promote these ideas of not prioritizing myself, and I have to sacrifice myself for the sake of something bigger, and the idea that I can't take the two in parallel, that tells me to sabotage myself and even abandon myself. Put your needs aside. And when we are doing it, हम collectively एक बहुत बड़ी problem perpetuate कर रहे हैं, which we are collectively like, you know, kind of sliding under the rug. कि इसके बारे में हम बात नहीं करेंगे. So the elephant in the room grows bigger and bigger, and everybody is squeezed to the corners. This becomes problematic. Why? Because everybody has a shadow side. We all have our vices. Everybody, right? The idea is not to abandon those vices. The idea is to understand कि मेरी क्या negative tendencies हैं और मैं उसको किस तरह integrate करूँ in my strengths. So how do I create that balance? मगर अगर हम collectively ये deny कर रहे हैं कि कोई problem नहीं है, then that is a problem. You see, collectively as a society अपनी सारी vices को एक कोने में कर रहे हैं और हम कह रहे हैं नहीं, I'm just only going to talk about, you know, land of the pure. No offense in that, but you are not integrating your dark side. So I think it's something that everybody is familiar with, the yin and yang sign, right?
Yeah.
So the circle is only complete when the light integrates the dark. Otherwise it's incomplete. Right.
Right.
So it can't really roll forward. So that now I want to talk about something that is very practically, something very idea ki baat ki hai na. Now, how does it practically manifest? It manifests in people that are taking up some behaviors as a trauma response, और उनको हम criticize करके और judge करके उनको बुरा इंसान कहते हैं. So in a way, we are, वो एक saying थी, very conflicting है कुछ लोगों के लिए. It says, hate the sin, love the sinner. But we hate the sinner.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
Judge the sinner, right? I want to say here कि the sin, जिस चीज़ को हम sin कहते हैं, psychologically speaking and emotionally speaking, if we try to understand the human, putting aside the judgment, it's a trauma response. हमारी society में अगर देखा जाए तो pornography, asexual behaviors, gambling, substance use, and even substance abuse are taken as sin. एक religious perspective से, किसी भी moral perspective से, ये हो सकता है sin. But if you're taking that perspective aside, and I'm only trying to understand that human, from a psychological perspective, it's a trauma response. They're trying to cope. They have latched onto one behavior to cope all their stress out.
Yeah, that's true.
जितना behavior बढ़ रहा है, इसका मतलब है उतनी stress भी बढ़ रही है, जिसको cope करने के लिए behavior बढ़ रहा है, right? Now we're saying this person is bad without saying this person को क्या concern है. What is making him go to that behavior? Because honestly speaking, if we even take away, let's say, there's an adult that is addicted to pornography, and we're saying, nahi, pornography is a problem, and let's change that. You can successfully change that, but guess what? Sometime later, that person is going to go towards another behavior, and that will become a problem. So वो चीज़ है कि it's going to cycle will repeat itself unless you address the root cause of it.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
that's when we go back to the prevention के जब emotional coping सीखनी है तब आप set the foundation right. If you want to do anything, set the foundation right. And if you can't do that or something got in the way and you haven't done that, that's all right. The first step is not judging. That's the first step.
Yeah, we judge a lot. अगर ये कर लें तो फिर I think on a bigger scale काफ़ी मसले जो हैं वो हल हो जाएं. Like
yeah, there's definitely a lot of codependency. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's this understanding that when someone seeks help for any mental health issue, they're weak, or it's related, or it's linked to weakness, or not being strong enough to deal with the problem themselves, in our society especially. So how will you just clarify this idea that this is just like a misconception, and इस पे I know बात हुई है, but I want you, like being a professional, to professionally use your, you have the knowledge, you worked with people, so just clarify this idea कि it's a misconception जो कि attach कर दी गई, and that's not true.
I think ये misconception वो लोग identify कर सकते हैं जिनका perspective problem पे focus नहीं करता मगर wider होता है. Again, जो ये बात understand करते हैं कि कोई चीज़ isolation में नहीं कोई चीज़. The earth is not in isolation. The universe is not in isolation. We have galaxies. So let alone, these problems जो कि from time to time आती रहती हैं. But I think if that's the perspective, right? So if you have a problem focused mind, you will look at the problems and that will be your entire life. But if your perspective is, okay, no, there is ebb and flow in things, problems aati hain, dissolve ho jati hain, dissolve ho jati hain, then you have a growth mindset, you're moving forward, right? So जहाँ तक ये बात है कि again there's judgment here कि कोई इंसान weak है अगर वो therapy में जा रहा है, but I can tell you, for a person to face their wrongs and then apologize for it and offer themselves and other people the compassion instead, I think it takes a very strong person at heart and in mind to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Why do I say this? Because denying, avoidance, going to other things to let out your stress is a defense mechanism, जो है कि हमारी normal psyche का part है. But if you're overusing it to an extent that now it's compromising other people, now we're judging other people, right? For whatever their choices are, then it means कि हम डरे हुए हैं खुद में. That's why we have to defend ourselves. We think we're under attack. That's why we have to defend ourselves. Because that's what defense is, right? We think we're under attack. So there's something inside us that's being triggered. That's why we're calling other people weak. Because if I admit that everybody has a, good and bad side, then I'm also saying I have a good and bad side.
Yeah.
Right? But
yeah,
that's a form of an attack for some people. No, I'm good. I'm not bad. I don't have these tendencies. So it takes somebody that's very strong and very grounded in themselves to be able to do that. It's scary. It's a scary process for sure. It's a vulnerable process. But होता है ना कि when the city is in blackout, like who's going to go out with a torch and find help? Takes a strong person to do that. It's not that they're scared, but they're brave more than they're scared.
Yeah, that's very very nicely put. And I think इससे काफ़ी ज़्यादा तमाम ही मेरे ख्याल से misconceptions पे ना एक बहुत अच्छा general perspective मिल जाता है. Alright, Shamyle, I would just like to ask you to give our listeners a message or anything you'd like to say end में to the people who are listening to just conclude the podcast.
Okay, I think I want to say, I just want to leave with one thing, and that's a lesson that we learn, in psychology. And if you're really reflecting on life, you will come to the same conclusion. कि हमारे जो processing होती है, the brain. I'm talking about something that's very concrete. It processes rational logic, reason on one end, and then it processes emotions in an entirely different way at a different part of the brain. इसका क्या मतलब है? इसका मतलब नहीं है कि हम या तो फिर इमोशंस को प्रेसिडेंस दें या लॉजिक को प्रेसिडेंस दें. इसका मतलब ये है कि you are designed in a way to keep both at parallel. So the logic is not going to be applied on emotions. आप उस तरह rationally emotions में नहीं सोच सकते. So let the emotions be. आप reasoning emotions के basis पे नहीं कर सकते because you end up in a wrong decision. So it's wise, we call it the wise mind, that caters for the emotion and the reason both, and then makes the decision, moves forward on the basis of what aligns in both emotion and reason. That's what we call wise mind.
This was very, very insightful. All right. I'd just like to add one thing आखिर में कि all the discussion we had in this podcast was just to give you a reminder, all of you who are listening, a reminder that mental health is important. It's just as important as your physical health, and people who are struggling with it and who seek out for help, they deserve care, they deserve healing, and they deserve compassion. And they're strong. They're very strong. Moreover, a lot of problems could be solved, and a lot of people could be benefited if we just adopt a more accepting behavior, a more compassionate, empathetic behavior. And this accepting behavior could remove a lot of barriers, significant barriers, जो कि किसी बंदे के रास्ते में हैं, जो who's seeking out for healing and help. So yeah, together as a community, I think we need to be a little more accepting of each other.
Absolutely. I think a little more compassion wouldn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, that's true. All right, thank you so much, Shamyle, for being here, taking out itna zyada time to talk to us. I'm honored. I feel honored to have this conversation with you. It was so much fun, amazingly insightful, and I'm absolutely sure that everybody has something to take away from this conversation. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of NCSC and on behalf of all of our team जो कि इस campaign पे काम कर रही है. We were very happy to have you here, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.